A storm wraps around Shutter Island, like the place is trying to hide itself from the world. Gray water crashes against black rock, and the ferry carrying the U.S. Marshals feels less like transportation and more like a warning. One of those marshals is Teddy Daniels, a man with sharp eyes, a guarded face, and a mind already carrying more weight than he admits. He is not just seasick from the crossing. He is tense because this island matters to him in ways his new partner does not yet understand. The other marshal is Chuck Hull, easygoing, polite, and observant. He tries to steady the mood with small talk, but Teddy is too focused on the case ahead. Officially, they are here to investigate the disappearance of a patient from Ashecliffe Hospital, a psychiatric facility for the criminally insane. Even before they step onto the island, the place feels wrong. Guards watch them like prison wardens. Doctors speak with measured caution. Every gate, every wall, every locked door suggests that whatever is hidden here is dangerous enough to justify absolute control. The missing patient is Rachel, a woman who drowned her 3 children and was committed to Ashecliffe. After losing her mind, somehow, she vanished from a locked room, leaving behind only one bizarre clue. A scrap of paper asking, the law of 4, who is 67? It should be a simple, impossible room mystery. A patient escaped. Find out how. Find out where she went. But almost immediately, Teddy feels that the official story is too neat, too rehearsed, too carefully delivered. Dr. Kali, the hospital's lead psychiatrist, welcomes the marshals with calm professionalism. He talks about humane treatment, progressive psychiatry, and the difficult balance between medicine and security. On the surface, he sounds reasonable. To Teddy, he sounds like a man hiding behind polished language. Teddy begins asking questions, and every answer seems to create 2 more. Why are some records missing? Why do the staff exchange looks before speaking? Why does the island have so many armed guards for a hospital? Why do the doctors seem more interested in controlling the investigation than helping it? If you enjoy dark psychological stories like this one, subscribe to Cinema Trigger, leave a like, and comment the next movie you want to see. Because this is not just a mystery. It is a story about trauma, identity, and the terrifying possibility that the mind can become its own prison. As Teddy and Chuck search Rachel's room, Teddy notices things that do not fit. The window is barred. The room was supposedly locked. There is no realistic path out. Either Rachel vanished through impossible means, or someone on this island is lying. The hospital itself is divided into sections that feel increasingly ominous. Ward A houses male patients, Ward B houses female patients, and beyond them stands Ward C, a fortress for the most violent and uncontrollable men on the island. Every structure on Shutter Island tells the same story. This place was not built only to heal people. It was built to contain something or many things, or maybe truths too ugly to be seen in daylight. Teddy has another reason for being here, one he keeps close to his chest. He believes a man named Andrew Leddies, the arsonist responsible for his wife's death, may be somewhere on this island. He says he came for the missing patient, but part of him came hunting for revenge. That hidden motive matters, because it shapes the way Teddy sees everything. He is not a neutral investigator. He is a wounded man walking into a maze while pretending he is only there to read the map. As the investigation moves forward, Teddy starts experiencing flashes of memory and dreamlike visions. He sees his wife Dolores, beautiful and sad, standing in impossible places. She speaks to him in warnings, fragments, and emotional riddles, as if memory itself is trying to tell him something he does not want to understand. Those visions are tied to another trauma buried inside him. The liberation of Daco during World War II. He remembers piles of frozen guards shot against the snow. Horror so absolute it tore a permanent wound through his mind. Shutter Island does not create his instability. It presses against scars that were already there. The case keeps twisting. A patient in Ward B seems terrified. When she sees Teddy, another slips him a message telling him to run. A storm hits the island, knocking out power and cutting off communication with the mainland. Suddenly, even the illusion of normal procedure is gone. Now Teddy is trapped on an isolated island full of violent patients, guarded doctors, and unanswered questions, with thunder shaking the walls and no way off until the weather clears. The atmosphere becomes claustrophobic, suffocating, almost dreamlike. He starts suspecting that Ashecliffe is involved in illegal experiments mind control. drugs, psychological manipulation, maybe something worse. The setting feeds that suspicion perfectly. Cold War, paranoia, secret institutions, armed men, missing records, whispering staff. Everything looks like the perfect cover for an operation no one is supposed to uncover. Chuck tries to remain grounded, urging Teddy to focus on evidence rather than instinct. But Teddy's instincts are all he trusts now. The more resistance he feels from the hospital staff, the more convinced he becomes that the island itself is staging a performance for him. Then the investigation reaches Ward. Ward C feels less like a hospital ward and more like the belly of a nightmare. The corridors are dark, damp, and lined with cells where men mutter, scream, or stare silently through bars. Every footstep echoes like they are walking deeper into a thought no healthy person should have. Inside this ward, Teddy meets George Noyce, a dangerous inmate who knows far more than he should. Noyce tells Teddy that everyone on the island is playing a game with him. He says Ashecliffe is not a hospital in the normal sense. It is a machine designed to break people apart and remake them. Noyce's words strike Teddy with the force of truth, not because they are proven, but because they align with everything he already fears. On T.I.'s Island, paranoia never feels absurd. It feels logical. That is what makes Shutter Island so powerful. The madness is always just believable enough. Teddy becomes increasingly certain that Rachel Solando is either dead, hidden, or never truly missing in the first place. He begins to think the case was designed to lure him into something bigger, something personal. The storm intensifies, and with it Teddy's mental state. Dreams bleed into memory. Memory bleeds into fear. Fear bleeds into certainty. He sees Dolores again, her dress soaked, her face full of sorrow, telling him that people are not what they seem, that this place was built on pain, that he must keep going. Those scenes matter because they are not random hallucinations. They are emotional pressure points. Every vision of Dolores pulls Teddy toward the wound at the center of himself, even while he believes he is moving closer to exposing the hospital. At one point, Teddy and Chuck discover that a patient count appears to be off. The clue about the law of Quattro and 67 starts to haunt Teddy's thinking. If there are 66 patients officially listed, then the 67th patient must be hidden. And if the law of 4 refers to an anagram, then names can be rearranged, identities can be disguised, and the whole island may be structured like a puzzle with Teddy inside it. That idea becomes an obsession. Teddy is no longer simply solving a disappearance. He is decoding a system. He believes someone here is experimenting on patients, and that Rachel Solando, Andrew Litt, and the mysterious 67th patient are all part of the same buried truth. Eventually, Teddy becomes separated from Chuck. The storm, the chaos, and the pressure of the investigation fractured their movement, and Teddy finds himself alone, which is the last thing a man in his condition needs. When Chuck disappears, Teddy reads it as proof that the hospital has moved against him. He is now certain that he is being manipulated. He steals, breaks into places he should not be, and pushes deeper into restricted parts of the island with the urgency of a man who thinks the truth is seconds away from being erased forever. He discovers records suggesting the hospital has treated him differently from what he expected. Conversations with staff take on a more loaded tone. Their concerns start sounding less like obstruction and more like something else, like people trying to keep him from collapsing. That ambiguity is what gives the film its grip. Every clue works in two directions. Either the hospital is hiding monstrous crimes, or Teddy's damaged mind is bending reality into a conspiracy story he can survive emotionally. At one point he encounters a woman hiding in a cave, a woman claiming to be the real Rachel. She tells him that Ashecliffe performs psychological experiments, that she discovered the truth, and that she was silenced for it. She tells him not to trust anyone in the hospital and warns him that he himself may already be drugged. It is one of the most important scenes in the film because it feels like confirmation. Everything Teddy suspects is suddenly spoken aloud. The cave Rachel is frightened, credible, and urgent. She gives his paranoia a voice, which makes the audience cling to it too. But Shutter Island is cleverer than that. It understands that a desperate mind will always be drawn toward the explanation that preserves its dignity. A conspiracy is easier to survive than guilt. Being hunted is easier to survive than being broken by your own past. With Chuck still missing, Teddy climbs toward the lighthouse, convinced that is where the real truth is hidden. To him, the lighthouse is the final locked room in a puzzle made of lies. He believes it contains medical experiments, surgical horrors, or proof that the island's doctors are monsters in white coats. As he reaches the lighthouse, the suspense peaks because the entire story has trained us to expect revelation through exposure. Find the hidden chamber. Confront the mastermind. Tear away the curtain. That is how thrillers usually work. But Shutter Island is not interested in the usual kind of reveal. Inside the lighthouse, Teddy does not find an operating room. He does not find tortured patients strapped to machines. He finds drkali.com waiting and ready to tell him the truth. And the truth is worse than everything Teddy imagined. Dr. Colley explains that Teddy Daniels does not exist. His real name is Andrew Lettis. A is not Aos. Marshal investigating a disappearance. He is a patient at Ashecliff, one of its most dangerous and delusional men. Chuck is not his partner. Chuck is actually Dr. Sheehan, his psychiatrist, who has been role-playing as Teddy's partner as part of an elaborate final therapeutic experiment. Rachel Solando did not escape, because there was no escape. The case was staged. The clues were built around Andrew's delusion. The hospital allowed him to act out his invented identity in the hope that, by following the fantasy all the way to the end, he might finally confront reality. That reality is unbearable. Andrew Liddy's murdered no wife through arson. Instead, his wife Dolores, deeply mentally ill and unraveling, drowned their 3 children in a lake behind their house. When Andrew came home and saw what she had done, he could not accept the truth that had been building for so long in front of him. Then Dolores asked him to set her free, and Andrew shot her. That is the real trauma at the center of the film. Not a conspiracy. Not secret experiments. Not a hidden patient. A father who found his children dead. A husband who killed his wife. And a mind that shattered under the weight of that moment. Everything Teddy created was a defense against that pain. The names Andrew Lettis and Rachel Solando are anagrams. The missing patient, the arsonist, the 67th patient. The conspiracies, they are all fragments of a false reality built to protect him from seeing himself clearly. The reason this twist lands so hard is because it does not erase the movie that came before it. It reinterprets it. Every strange look from the staff, every missing record, every cautious answer, every disturbing interaction suddenly means something else. The island was not gaslighting Teddy into madness. It was trying one final time to guide Andrew back toward truth. At first, Andrew rejects it. He fights the explanation. He clings to the version of himself that still has purpose, still has innocence, still has someone else to blame. Because if Teddy Daniels dies, what remains is a man who failed to save his children and then killed the only person left to punish. But little by little, the memory breaks through. He remembers the lake. He remembers the silence. He remembers carrying the bodies of his children from the water. He remembers Dolores asking if it would all be okay. He remembers the gun. Those moments are devastating because Shutter Island stops being a thriller and becomes a tragedy. The real horror was never hidden in the hospital. It was buried in a man's own memory, locked away because remembering it felt more impossible than any conspiracy. Andrew finally seems to come back to himself. For a brief time, the roleplay appears to have worked. He recognizes Dr. Sheehan. He accepts his name. He understands what happened. Dr. Colley is relieved because this was the hospital's last attempt before authorizing Andrew's lobotomy. That makes the next morning almost unbearable. Sitting on the steps outside, Andrew appears calm. Dr. Sheehan approaches, hopeful that the recovery has held, but then Andrew speaks as Teddy again, as if the breakthrough has vanished overnight. At first, it feels like defeat. It feels like the experiment failed, like the truth was too painful to survive. Then Andrew says one of the most haunting lines in modern cinema. Which would be worse, to live as a monster or to die as a good man? That line changes everything one last time. Because now the question becomes whether Andrew truly relapsed, or whether he chose to sink back into delusion so he would no longer have to live with what he remembered. Maybe he forgot again, or maybe he understood perfectly and chose the only escape still available to him. Either way, the ending is brutal. The orderlies lead him away to be lobotomized, not as a triumphant villain finally defeated, and not as a hero uncovering evil, but as a broken man who may have decided that oblivion was kinder than memory. That is why Shutter Island stays with people. It begins like a mystery about a missing patient. It becomes a conspiracy thriller about institutional secrecy. Then it reveals itself as a story about grief, guilt, and a mind so damaged it would rather invent an entire world than live inside one unbearable truth. The island itself becomes symbolic by the end, cut off from the mainland, surrounded by violent water, full of locked wards, guards, and storms. It mirrors Andrew's own mind. Isolated, compartmentalized, flooded by trauma, impossible to leave without crossing something dangerous. Even the supporting characters become more tragic in retrospect. Dr. Kali is not a cartoon villain. He is a doctor gambling everything on a radical treatment. Dr. Xian is not a fake partner manipulating Teddy for fun. He is a psychiatrist walking directly into a dangerous delusion in the hope that empathy can succeed where force has failed. And the audience becomes part of the trap too. We want the conspiracy because it is exciting. We want the hidden villain because it is cleaner. We want the lighthouse to contain something shocking because it would be easier than the truth. The film uses our own appetite for mystery against us. That is part of what makes the ending so powerful. The real answer is not bigger. It is sadder. No grand machine. No secret surgery chamber. No mastermind controlling minds from the shadows. Just a man destroyed by grief in a hospital, trying one last desperate method before erasing what is left of him. If this story stayed with you, subscribe to Cinema Trigger, leave a like, and comment the next movie you want covered. Because the most disturbing stories are not always the ones with monsters hiding in the dark. Sometimes the real horror is what the mind will build to avoid looking directly at its own pain.